Hi, I'm Oscar, one half of the F1 couple, and today I'm here to give you a summary of all the Formula E action from the doubleheader in Berlin. So there's no better place to start off than qualifying for the first race on the Saturday morning, and if we have a look at Group A, and it's Wehrlein who tops the group with Van Dorn and Mortara also going through. There is a big shock though as Seta Camera in his Dragon Penske car also advances for the first time this season, and it's Evans who's the key guy to miss out. So swiftly moving on to Group B, and it's Da Costa, Lotterer and the other DS Techeetah of Verne who are going through, with another big surprise as Sims will also advance. After Buemi, who was sitting fourth, is penalised for spending too little time in the pit lane, which is a bit of a bizarre rule if you ask me. There are some big names to go out here, with De Vries only 6th, Bird in 8th, and Freintz having absolute disaster of a session down in 10th. I think I said last time he was been Mr. Consistent this season, but absolute the epitome of the opposite of that really in this qualifying session. So if we move on to quarterfinal 1, Wehrlein against Sims, and it's another amazing shock as Sims takes the win by over 2/10 against a Porsche car that had been looking pacey all throughout the practice sessions and in the first stage of qualifying. The third quarterfinal, and it's Lotterer against Mortara. Mortara overturns a deficit of nearly 2/10 to beat Lotterer by just 8 thousandths at the line. Very exciting. Quarterfinal 4, and it's Da Costa against Seta Camera, and there's no upset here as Da Costa advances with over 2/10 of a gap to Seta Camera. But the lap from the Dragon is still very good, and he's done great to get through to this point, and it's enough to put him ahead of Van Dorn on the grid, so he'll start 7th. So semi-final 1 now, and it's Verne against Sims. Verne makes a mistake at turn 1, running wide, losing a 10th and a half, but is gradually pulling it back, pulling that time throughout the rest of the lap, and as they get to the line, it's absolutely dead level. Insane scenes. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I don't think anyone could believe what they were watching, really. So completely the same time to thousandths of the second, which is what they use in Formula E to measure, and indeed in most motorsports. And apparently, this scenario hadn't really been envisaged, and there was no good rule to decide it, only that as it is in Formula 1 and in the group session, the driver who sets the time first is the one who is ahead. But it's kind of doctored in this way because Sims has to go out first, being the slowest in the groups. So Sims advances to the final in a bit of a controversial fashion, and I'm sure that rule will be looked at, but great for him to get through to the final, you have to say, having had well, let's not beat around the bush, a terrible season so far. And in the second semi-final, Mortara against Da Costa. Mortara wins with an incredibly tight duel. The gap never went over a 10th of a second throughout the whole of it, which I really enjoyed, but couldn't quite match the drama of the first semi-final. And onto the final, and Sims led for the whole of the lap, but made a mistake at the final corner to effectively gift Mortara pole position. And it's Mortara's first pole position in Formula E. It's still an outstanding performance by Sims, who hadn't yet even scored a point in the championship. If he hadn't have made that mistake at the last corner, those 3 points for pole position would have been his first points of the season. So onto the race, and off the start, Da Costa looked like he was going to make an absolute worldie of a move around the outside of Sims, but couldn't quite make it stick. But his teammate Verne actually slipped back a place into 5th as Lotterer got past him. It doesn't get any better for Verne as he makes a mistake, and the other Porsche of Wehrlein actually gets past him as well. As one DS Techeetah is going backwards, the other's going forwards, as Da Costa makes a great move on Sims to take second, and just a lap later, it's Lotterer who's following him through to get into third. Sims is clearly struggling with his car, visibly having to lift earlier than any of the other drivers around him, and it shows again as Verne's able to get through past him. With 33 minutes left on the clock, Wehrlein is the first driver to dive for attack mode, and he managed to do it without dropping a place. And one lap later, Sims is also diving for the attack mode lane, but he does drop behind the Porsche driver. At the same time as that's happening, Verne is diving through on Lotterer to get into third, and Lotterer kind of sees it as a sign, yep, okay, I'm losing time now, so he dives for attack mode to activate his extra power. Wehrlein then managed to get past both the DS Techeetahs, first of Verne, then Da Costa, just before his attack mode runs out, getting him into a second place now. So as always, it's kind of a bit difficult to follow exactly who's where when the attack modes are going on. It's kind of just this crazy overtaking spree as one driver's going forward and then they're running out of attack mode, then the driver who was ahead of them has activated it and then gets back past. So after the melee, it's more or less as you were. Lotterer has made a net gain up to second, with Da Costa being the one replaced down to third. But Mortara is still leading the way by quite a margin. And in fact, Mortara hasn't even taken his first attack mode yet. All these drivers behind have taken it and not been able to really make an impact on him. Yes, closed up a little bit, but not enough to have been able to get anywhere near shaping for a move. So it's Sims who's the first person to take their second attack mode, as he had a big gap back to Van Dorn and was able to do it without losing a place. And a lap later, Mortara uses his first one, only losing out to Lotterer, who he then immediately passes only half a lap later to get back into the lead. It's looking very good for the Venturi driver. Van Dorn is having an insane race. At one point he was down in 12th, and in quick succession he makes moves on Da Costa and then Sims and then Vern as well to get himself up to third, which, I mean, at the start of the race he was looking nowhere near that. It was really great racing and good tactics with attack mode as well, and just well-timed moves to get him up into a very strong position in this race. So as we stand right now, Mortara is still leading with Lotterer in second and Van Dorn of course up to third. And those three guys haven't taken their second attack mode yet, but pretty much everyone else behind them has. So now we're going to see exactly how the attack mode strategy kind of plays out between these guys. And it's Lotterer in second who goes for it first, dropping only behind Van Dorn, which is pretty crucial for him to make it work. A lap later, Van Dorn then takes it, dropping only behind Lotterer. And then a few minutes later, Mortara takes his, dropping behind both Van Dorn and Lotterer. But at this point, Lotterer runs out of his attack mode. So as soon as Lotterer is out of all of his extra power, Van Dorn is moving through into turn 6, and Mortara is right behind him, following him through into the same corner, which is pretty crucial for the Venturi driver, because then he's still got that extra time where he doesn't need to be worrying about Lotterer and he can just focus on getting past Van Dorn. Which he does a lap later when Van Dorn's out of his attack mode into the same corner. He's taking the lead and surely has got complete control of this race now. And as this is happening, Vern is actually moved past Lotterer to take third away from him. So with 5 minutes left, Vern uses his fan boost to get past Van Dorn up into second place. But will he be able to do anything about Mortara out front? With less than 2 minutes left on the clock, Vern sends it up the inside of Mortara into turn 6, but the Venturi driver is pretty cunning about this, cuts back nicely, and actually Vern loses a bunch of time and looks pretty under pressure from Van Dorn behind. It was a pretty frenetic last lap with pretty much everyone hitting 0% over the line. It's quite a long run to the line on this way round of the track, which makes it pretty exciting. All the guys kind of who's going to be able to coast the least amount of distance to the line. But it's Mortara who takes the win comfortably, with Vern hanging on to second from Van Dorn and Lotterer hassling him fast behind. So if you have a look at the rest of the results from the race now, you probably have to say Evans there in 5th. He'll be pretty pleased with that after not a great qualifying, but, you know, what he did in Rome from a lowly grid spot as well. He could have maybe been hoping for more. And the other Jaguar, actually, of Bird, getting up into 7th. That's not bad from him either. He's made up about 8 spots or something it must have been there. Sims in 9th, you have to point him out, getting his first points of the season. Obviously from starting second, he could have hoped for more. If some of the other guys there had a bit more of a crazy race. It was pretty much a standard race, really. There wasn't anything too mad that happened. But if that had happened, some of the guys who were quicker, they'd have been out earlier on. He'd have got some extra points, but 9th, probably the maximum he could have got with not a particularly good race car. And now if we look a bit further down the field, Freinz got up to 12th, but that's not really good enough for his championship push. Sete Camera in 17th. He'll be disappointed after a great qualifying, but that Dragon car just isn't up to scratch in the races, is it? And that's shown by Giovinazzi as well, down, well, 30 odd seconds off behind anyone else. And then 2 retirements, De Grassi and Casti, both of which I didn't particularly notice. I don't think it was really covered in the coverage, but yeah, disappointing for both those guys. So, shall we move on to Sunday then, the second race, and we'll start with qualifying for it. And Group A, of course, Van Dorn was the person who would top this group, with Freinz much better qualifying than yesterday. And then De Grassi and the second division of Cassidy also advancing. Evans is once again not making it through in 5th, with Saturday's surprise package of Sims down in 6th. But it's a disaster for Verline, all the way down in 10th, after that Porsche had been showing great pace all of the day before, but not to be for the German. In Group B, It's yesterday's pole sitter and race winner Mortara, who's topping the group by a massive 3/10, with De Vries, Da Costa and Lotterer also going through. Those guys are all quick, so it's not a big shock, but Verne missing out in 5th, he'll be disappointed, and of course Bird down in 8th. He's just not been able to get the maximum out of that car this year, has he? So looking at the quarterfinals, and it's Van Dorn versus Lotterer up first, and Van Dorn locks up into turn 1, losing 3/10, and that pretty much killed off any chances he had of going through, and it's Lotterer then, of course, who will advance. Quarterfinal 2, and it's Da Costa against Freins, and it's a closely fought duel throughout, but Freins wins it by just 14,000th of a second. Quarterfinal 3 is, of course, De Grassi against De Vries. De Vries takes a commanding win by nearly 3/10, and he built that up over the whole lap, just like bit by bit, throughout each corner, and this is surely him trying to get his championship back on track. The final quarterfinal of Mortara against Cassidy. Mortara's win didn't really look in doubt during this duel, and he took it by nearly 3/10 of a second, but it's still a solid lap for Cassidy, who, it was enough to put him 6th, but ultimately he would start at the back of the grid as he had to replace some of the parts of his car with the horrible rule where you lose like 20 places and also get a drive through. I really don't like that. Moving on to the semi-finals then. First up, it was Freins against Lotterer, and Freins makes it through with a rugged but fast lap to beat Lotterer by, it was just a 10th and a half. And in the second semi-final, it's Mortara against De Vries, and De Vries, his lap was fast and also quite scrappy. Mortara's was absolutely sublime, and he takes his place in the final by nearly 4/10. So moving on to the final, and it's of course Mortara against Freins, and Mortara, he's dominated the Saturday qualifying, he's dominated the Saturday race, he's dominated Sunday qualifying as well, taking pole position by a pretty large margin, almost half a second over Freins. Absolutely insane from Mortara. Well done, lad. So moving on to the race, and what a start from Nick De Vries, shooting up from 3rd to 1st in the first corner of this race. What a start from the world champ. Not all that much really happened in the first 10 minutes, but then with 35 minutes to go, Evans makes a nice move into turn 6 on Verne to take 7th, and Roland also follows him through half a lap later into turn 1. So the difference between this race and the one on Saturday, other than of course it being in the other direction around the track, is the attack mode is, there's only one, and it's 8 minutes long. And De Vries takes this pretty early on, really, but he drops only down to 3rd, which is not too bad. Freins goes to take his attack mode a lap later, but crucially he must have missed one of the centres, and I have to say I couldn't see it. It looked like he was going perfectly through those gates. So absolute disaster for him, dropping him down to 4th, and absolutely no power gain to show for it. And he's going to have to lose that time going wide to take attack mode again, another lap. De Vries retakes the lead from Mortara, and surely now he just has to scamper as far up the road as possible before the Venturi driver then takes his attack mode and has that power advantage against him. Da Costa has also taken his attack mode and managed to get past Mortara to now get up to 2nd. But of course we have to remember at this point, the Venturi car, that hasn't taken attack mode at all yet. He's going to get all of that advantage later on in the race. So when Mortara goes to take his attack mode finally, we have De Vries, Da Costa, Van Dorn and Lotterer out front. But Mortara's right behind them, and he's got a bunch of extra power to use over the next few laps to try and get through. Mortara's also got De Grassi and Freins behind him, and they've both got attack mode, and all of these 4 guys in front of them, they have no extra power left. So over the next few laps, this trio of Mortara, De Grassi and Freins are able to pick off first Lotterer, and then Van Dorn, and then Da Costa, with their extra power from attack mode to move themselves up to 2nd, 3rd and 4th on the road. So as the 3 of their attack modes come to the end, it's De Vries who's leading, from Mortara in 2nd, De Grassi 3rd, and Freins, the only person to lose out really over the course of this, in 4th, because of course he missed the attack mode the first time, didn't he? After all of this craziness, it's pretty much the same order as it was before at the front, with the exception, of course, being Freins. So with 16 minutes left on the clock, Da Costa uses his fan boost to get past Freins, with Van Dorn also following him through. So they're 4th and 5th now. Van Dorn is once again making some moves, just as he did the day before, and he gets past Da Costa. So we have Mercedes powertrains in the first 4 positions on the road now, just showing how good they've been this season. Roland's had a very solid race so far. Kind of quiet, but he's got himself into a good position, and now he's making more moves, getting past Da Costa and Freins, so he's P5 at the minute. With just 2 minutes left, Van Dorn completes his brilliant drive to get into 3rd position past Degrassi, so it'll be 2/3 out of 2 races for him. Roland's now struggling with his energy consumption, as that Mahindra often shows later in the races, and Frantz and Da Costa get back through, but still can't take away from what a good race it's been from him. On the very final lap, Frantz makes a bit of a questionable move on Da Costa, giving a big shove in the back on a straight to get himself up to 5th. But what I liked was after the race, they were able to have a bit of a laugh about it. No penalties given out. Clearly they just thought, well, it's kind of just hard, but fair. Maybe not in my point of view, but fair racing. If Da Costa's going to smile about it, then he can't really complain. So at the checkered flag, it's De Vries who takes a win to surely maybe give him championship hopes a bit of a boost, with Mortara in second. What a great weekend it's been from him. And Van Dorn in third. It's been very solid for the championship leader. So if we look at some of the other positionings of the drivers in this race, Roland there finishing second. Good race from him. Evans managing to get a point in 10th, but it's not been great for him. And Verne slipping down to 9th after his second place finish on a Saturday. Not a great race from him. Looking a bit further down, Bird just missing out on points in 11th. Verlaine in 12th after his poor qualifying just completely ruined that race. And further down, Giovinazzi after he had had his best qualifying of the season, but once again finishing right at the back of the grid, but no DNFs in this race. That's a bit of a plus, isn't it? So if we turn our attention to the driver's standings, then after these 2 races, it's still Van Dorn at the top of the table on 111 points. Mortara in second. He's clawed his way back up. I think I said in the previous episode, he was in the sort of second tier, I would say, of the driver's standings, and he's had a great weekend and boosted his hopes hugely after a few very disappointing races. Back up into second place. Verne in third, collecting a podium. Points scored in both races. That's pretty decent. Evans, he'll be a bit disappointed. And of course, Frantz, I'd called him Mr. Consistency, but the race on Saturday could really cost him in this championship. Looking further down, outside of that top 10, and Sims, he's finally got his first points of the season, thanks to that 9th place on Saturday. So it's just the 2 Dragon drivers of Sette Camera and Giovinazzi yet to score this year. The constructor standings, and it's still Mercedes EQ who lead the way, with Rocket Venturi up into second place now, and DS Techeetah not far behind them in third. And of course, it's Dragon Penske at the bottom, still yet to score, but come on guys, you will get a point at some point. Don't get disappointed. So that's all for this episode. Up next, we've got Jakarta, a new track in a completely new city in a new country. No one really knows what it's going to throw up, but I'm looking forward to it. Maybe it'll be like a very humid and possibly weather might come into it, you'd imagine, in a place like Indonesia. But I'm looking forward to that. About 3 weeks' time, I think, away that is. But until then, this has been Oscar from the F1 Couple. Of course, remember to get us on all those socials. So we're at the F1 Couple on Twitter and on Instagram. Like, follow, subscribe, whatever it is, on whatever platform you're watching or listening, please do that. It always gives us a little bit of a boost. And until next time, I've been Oscar from the F1 Couple, and I'll see you later.